Viewers like you make this program possible. Support your local PBS station.
How do you want to wear it today?
Children.
Meet new friends.
Our most valuable resource.
Clap your hands.
In a rapidly changing world, how are we preparing them for the future?
Our kids are going to have to work with knowledge that hasn't been discovered yet, on technologies that haven't been invented yet.
How can schools today help students of all backgrounds meet the challenges of tomorrow?
Inequality in the United States is our Achilles heel.
We want a world where, regardless of where you are born, you have got an equal shot.
Can science help us find a way to give all children an equal shot?
What do you think? You look like an astronaut, maybe?
We shouldn't be asking kids to beat the odds. We should be using science to change the odds.
Cortex?
Today's researchers are peering into the brain, trying to unlock the secrets of how children learn.
Reading is not a skill that the brain is wired to do.
What does it say?
Autumn?
Yes.
We're trying to get to the point where I can say that this is the magic that will really help enhance school performance.
So we might rethink the word reflection.
Can their discoveries help educators transform our schools?
I want to smell it. I want to taste it. I want to know how it looks.
It is possible to change the brains of children in ways that can level the playing field.
How many people saw the growth?
Individual children who think differently, who learn differently, or on different paths can now get the thing that works best for them.
That's why.
The stakes could not be higher.
Public education, K-12, is not a terminal degree. It's the beginning of the rest of your life.
Ready, set, go. Look at that.
School of the Future, right now on Nova. When freshman Omar Gaitan skateboards to school, he's careful to take the same route and wear the right colors.
In the streets, the main thing you gotta worry about, violence, gangs. It's not as violent as it used to be, but like there's still a gang presence. If they do something to you, you're expected to retaliate.
Across the freeway, Cole McFall, a senior at one of California's top-ranked high schools, raises a different kind of worry.
I think some people at our school do feel a need to succeed, and they push themselves really hard. There's like this mentality that, oh my gosh, I need to do well, I need to work super hard.
This is Silicon Valley, the home of Apple, Google, and Facebook. It is also home to two very different communities, separated only by a freeway.
In these two cities, Palo Alto and East Palo Alto, life is entirely different. The resources for children are entirely different. The opportunities are entirely different. The schools are entirely different.
We have students who really want to succeed. And if success means learning in a certain path, they're going to really be ultra focused on that.
We have a lot of students who are helping to pay the rent. Not just adding a little bit here and there, but literally paying the rent.
All over the country, you can find these contrasts. Inequality in the United States is our Achilles heel.
Each year across the country, millions of children participate in a public education system built on a promise. That all students deserve an equal opportunity to learn, regardless of zip code. But for many students, a long history of inequity has left that promise unfulfilled.
The United States is nowhere near the top of the list.
Students from Asia to Europe outperform Americans on tests.
Every 5 years, students from around the world take a unique test that consistently shows Americans ranking well below their peers from other industrialized nations. But that is not the whole story.
In fact, part of the American public education system is doing pretty well. We actually rank first in the world in reading in schools that serve fewer than 10% of kids in poverty.
America has a child poverty rate nearly double that of countries like Canada and Germany, who outperform the United States.
High-performing nations on PISA scores have very tiny percentages of their kids in poverty. We just have a much steeper slope in this society to climb.
If you're designing a system that ensures that poor kids and kids of color are going to get less of everything that we know matters the most in public education, then you have a civil rights quagmire.
In spite of increased attention on education, in some states, nearly 1/3 of low-income students never finish high school.
Let's be clear, the achievement gap is caused by the opportunity gap. It hobbles far too many of our young people.
While the opportunity gap in America is deep-seated, can our schools do a better job closing the achievement gap? How can they best serve all students? Can the science of learning help more children reach their potential?
Kids need to feel engaged to really make optimal use of your educational opportunities. And the neural data are giving us new insights into the mechanics of that process.
Can new technologies provide more individualized instruction?
The child's education should be centered around the way that that child can receive the best education to help them grow.
Allegiance to the flag.
How can we transform our one-size-fits-all education model to prepare students for an unpredictable future?
For the first time in our history, we have an economy for which the only thing that's certain is uncertainty and change. And so what we have to prepare people for is adaptability.
Oh, so that's why.
Teachers, students, parents, and scientists all across the country take center stage.
Everyone has a growth mindset.
As they explore innovative approaches to education and a new vision for the school of the future.
Wait, there's cornets. There's actually cornets. I know. Yay! Oh, yeah, I never knew.
What does a child need to become a successful student? Most experts agree that developing certain skills early on is essential.
There are a set of skills that all children need to be learners. They need to be able to pay attention, to concentrate, to focus for long periods of time.
But some conditions, including growing up in poverty, can hinder the development of these skills.
Within low-income households comes risks around learning. And we have a huge number of children who are being exposed to stresses that actually cause them to come into kindergarten not ready for learning. There are gaps that will persist over time.
At the University of Oregon's Brain Development Lab, neuroscientist Eric Pakulak and his team are looking for ways to help children overcome these gaps. To do this, they study how our brains learn to pay attention and focus from an early age.
When you're paying attention, your brain is essentially turning up the volume on what I'm saying and also suppressing the distracting information that's going on around you.
What's your name?
That's a very powerful skill for young children. It's part of self-regulation, which involves your ability to use your brain to control your body, to focus attention, to suppress distracting information.
I need this one.
They studied preschool-age students and found that the ability to focus can closely align with socioeconomic status.
If you're growing up in an environment that's very chaotic, that's not very predictable, that in some cases could even potentially be dangerous, it's actually to your benefit in that environment to not suppress distracting information to the same degree as other children.
Were you making a joke, Cleo?
And so what is potentially a large benefit in that environment could then not be such a benefit when the child is moving into a school environment where those abilities are very important. What's going on there?
To better understand how a child's experience outside of the classroom can impact school readiness, they began their research in the home.
Morning, Sally. You got your clothes all picked up for school today?
In Eugene, Oregon, Crystal Ruley begins her day like most parents, by getting her children off to school.
When you're all done, we can go get ready.
I got a shirt and some pants. All I need is socks and shoes.
Perfect.
But she has the added challenge of being a single mom to 3 kids, 2 of them under the age of 8.
Get your hair taken care of.
The youngest, 5-year-old Araceli, is getting ready for school at the local Head Start, a federally funded education program that serves low-income families.
How do you want to wear it today? Should we put in a ponytail or a braid?
Ponytails.
2 ponytails?
This mother-daughter exchange may seem unremarkable, but Crystal is practicing parenting techniques meant to reduce stress and heighten focus in day-to-day interactions.
There you go, all done. You're good to go. You did a lot of these on your chart today. Can you tell me which ones you did? Those 2? What's this one?
Wake up.
You woke up, huh? Do you want a sticker for that one? You do? Do you want me to pick it, or do you want to pick it?
She gives Araceli concrete choices and rewards her for making decisions.
What a good job. All right. Go see teacher Stephanie. Yeah, tell her about your morning.
Crystal and Araceli are part of a study at the University of Oregon, where researchers are working with Head Start of Lane County on techniques that help children learn to focus. What they do at home is amplified by what takes place in the classroom. The goal is to see if this program leads to better learning outcomes for preschoolers.
If you're not listening to the directions, can we play our games? Because you won't know what to do.
Children at this age are starting to focus their attention for longer periods of time. And they're starting to develop the ability to ignore the distracting information. These are sort of foundational skills that can be of great benefit to the child going into the school environment, and then some evidence even suggests longer lasting effects into adulthood.
In one activity, called Dr. Distraction, students must walk along a ribbon while carrying an object on a spoon,
You'd be the best Dr. Distraction there is.
without being distracted by the commotion that surrounds them.
Over the red stick and done.
This is a really important period in brain development for very young children. Targeting these vulnerable brain systems at this particular point in development might essentially help strengthen the architecture of the brain and provide an important platform for these children moving forward.
Nice job, Araceli. I'll take your frog. You give that brain a kiss. And make a choice.
Some of these children make regular visits to the Brain Development Lab at the University of Oregon, so the team can measure any impact of the focus training.
All right, here we go into the brain lab. Now we're gonna put your hat on.
5-year-old Sawyer is being fitted with an EEG cap that measures the electrical activity in his brain.
Okay, we're gonna strap you in. What do you think? You look like an astronaut, maybe? Maybe a deep sea diver?
Astronaut.
Astronaut, that's a good one.
An electroencephalogram, or EEG, picks up wave patterns generated by brain cells communicating with one another through electrical impulses. Occurring within milliseconds of a stimulus, these impulses make EEG a fairly reliable way for scientists to gauge a person's response to a particular event.
All right, let's get in our throne. Here we go.
Sawyer is going to listen to some stories to test his ability to focus his attention.
Okay, you ready to watch some stories? Okay, here we go.
All right, here we go, kiddo.
Harry was a white dog with black spots. On his birthday,
Sawyer is told to focus on a story about a dog called No Roses for Harry, playing from a speaker on his left side, while pictures from the book are shown on the screen in front of him.
It was the silliest sweater he'd ever seen. The next day, when Harry went downtown with the children, wearing his new sweater,
Soon, another story called I Love You, Blue Kangaroo begins playing from a speaker on his right side.
Blue Kangaroo belonged to Lily. He was her very own kangaroo.
Sawyer is told to ignore the second story and only focus on the first, the one about the dog.
then he tried to lose it in the grocery department.
The next Saturday,
Finally, he tried to lose
Lily's
it in the
mother's
flower
friend
department.
Florence came to tea.
So Natalie's look good.
Very nice.
Soon, intermittent noises begin playing from both speakers.
As they started home, Harry was beginning to think he'd never.
These sounds trigger an immediate response in Sawyer's brain and help Paculak identify which story Sawyer is more focused on.
Wondering what to do, Harry noticed a loose stitch in his
Things happen very fast in the brain. We can look at whether there's a larger brain response to something that you're paying attention to compared to the brain response to something that you're not paying attention to.
Harry didn't know it, but a bird was watching.
The stakes here are high. Paculak is trying to figure out if the interventions might make a difference.
This is a powerful technique for studying the brains of young children because we're able to actually look at outcomes in terms of brain function. With our new techniques, we're really able to document the vulnerability of the brain to the pernicious effects of early adversity.
Okay, if you turn to page 14, maybe some of you had a chance this week to try this out.
While the preschoolers are tested in the lab and instructed in the classroom during the day, their parents head to the school at night.
The other parallel line of research that we did was looking at how working closely with parents might improve these outcomes for children.
This is where Crystal comes to learn strategies to reduce stress at home and encourage her kids to pay attention to what she is saying.
There's a long history of evidence about the effects of positive parenting and getting parents more involved.
They're now ready for more thinking opportunities. Okay, so would anyone like to share any experiences that they had trying it out? Yeah, sure, go ahead.
I have two younger children. They're really into the whole idea of it and getting rewarded with little stickers.
So they're doing it on their own?
They're kind of competing a little bit, and they're just coming to me as they do it, and then they're like, hey, I brushed my teeth, can I get my sticker?
So it's kind of flipped the script. Instead of you chasing them around, they're chasing you around, and they're paying attention to you. It's not wah, wah, wah. Moving away from that and actually giving them a reason to tune in to your words.
We were able to document reductions in parenting stress in these parents. They were reporting better social skills and fewer problem behaviors in their children.
They are going to be paying attention.
But does reducing stress at home, combined with activities in the classroom, really improve a child's ability to focus?
What we were able to show is that children who were randomly assigned to receive this intervention that involved working more closely with parents, as well as the child attention training, that we do see that these brain systems for attention improve in children from backgrounds of poverty.
This is not the only evidence that points to the value of early intervention and the role of parents in a child's education.
Education is the thing that touches every single one of us. Not once, but twice in our life. We go to school and we send our kids to school, and we want the best because we know if we give our kids the best education, that is the foundation they need to succeed in whatever life choices they choose.
Many experts believe that parents are critical to helping children learn better.
I don't think that we'll be able to close the achievement gap without learning how to effectively engage parents. Home is where children spend 75% of their waking hours, and yet our system does shockingly little to try to capture any educational value from this time.
With the help of parents, Alejandro Gac Artigas is looking to nurture a critical skill for young learners: reading.
When I became a first-grade teacher in Philadelphia, I was bowled over by the fact that it took my kids till the end of November for their reading levels to finally catch up to where they had been before the summer. And when I talked to other teachers about what was going on, they all shared in this really matter-of-fact way, that's just the summer slide. As if it were some law of nature that growing up poor, for every 2 steps forward you take during the year, you're going to take a step back during the summer.
Studies point to a troubling trend among low-income students. Their reading skills can erode dramatically during the summer months, a major contributor to the achievement gap.
I began to realize that summer learning loss is a symptom of an underlying, deeper problem, which is that parents have largely been left out of the process of educating their kids.
Okay, so we want to have your child read with you and alone, right? We want to read together and alone. We need both of those things to improve the reading levels.
One study found that this slide can become a gap that has 5th graders reading at a 2nd grade level. So Gac Artigas founded Springboard Collaborative, a program to help parents foster better reading habits in their children. Students receive daily reading instruction for 5 weeks during the summer. Additionally, their parents attend weekly workshops with them to learn techniques for encouraging reading at home.
Everyone is doing an amazing job of working hard, and so this is just another reminder about the goals and how you can monitor that progress.
Both the teacher and the parent share a goal for the child. They both want to see the kid become a successful reader.
And what was a success? What was?
And they have complementary skill sets to make it happen.
Have you all been doing any?
The teacher is the expert on instruction. The parent is the expert on their own child.
Ken McFarland is the expert on his son, Marcus.
To send your child to school and think that they're gonna magically become who you want them to be is questionable at best.
Meet new friends back.
So I filled my home with books and I thought that I would produce a reader, but that alone doesn't work. You have to put in the work to produce a reader.
Marcus attends a public school in Philadelphia. And while he's not a struggling reader, his kindergarten teacher felt he wasn't living up to his potential. So she recommended Springboard Collaborative.
They taught us how to make reading more interactive. Asking questions prior to reading, in the middle of reading, after reading is finished. And it basically encouraged us to be more involved, encourage him to take responsibility for himself.
What does this say?
Autumn?
Yes.
I don't know what that means.
That's the fall, the
It
seasons.
According to Springboard Collaborative, in just 5 weeks, its students replaced a typical 3-month reading loss with a more than 3-month reading gain.
Those 5 weeks are really intended to build some habits that a family can take and run with.
The plow digs up the plants and churns the potatoes to the surface.
When it was a stop on the spice trading.
I can think of no more natural way to personalize instruction than to do so with a family member.
Did you see anything amazing? Weeds and rocks. Same here, said Annie.
That, for me, is where the magic is, and I think it's every bit as magical for low-income kids as we know it to be in higher-income places.
I like reading because
when you read something, they have different problems than yours. And when you look at other people's problems, it makes you forget your own.
you can imagine about anything you want.
I wish I had more time for it, but I do like reading.
If programs like Springboard can bolster children's literacy skills, can reading interventions impact a child's developing brain? Neuroscientist Joanna Christodoulou is trying to find out.
First, you're learning to read, and then you're reading to learn. And so during the earliest stages of education in early elementary school, your job really is learn how to read and learn how to do it well. Reading is not a skill that the brain is wired to do. Children have to orchestrate regions designed to serve other purposes and organize them in service of reading. Come on in, let me show you the real brain camera. Here it is right through that window.
Early reading deficits in children can lead to learning difficulties later on. So Christodoulou is studying young readers at the earliest possible stage using magnetic resonance imaging, or MRI. Christodoulou focuses on two parts of the brain involved in language. Known as Broca's and Wernicke's areas, they're named for the scientists who discovered their functions.
Wernicke's we understand to be very important for language comprehension. And Broca's area is incredibly important for language production. And that's important even before reading onset. Because when you're learning to read, you're harnessing regions that have been serving your language capacities already.
Research suggests that the development of Broca's and Wernicke's depends a lot on a child's environment.
When we think about kids who are at risk, that could translate to things like how many books are in the home, or how much language does a child hear, not from a television, but from actual people.
Growing up in a less advantaged household may, for some children, slow the development of areas of the brain critical to language and reading.
We looked at the structural data, and we found a very notable correlation between Broca's area and socioeconomic status. On average, the lower your socioeconomic status, the smaller that region.
Christodoulou wants to see if early reading interventions can change the physical structure of these crucial regions of the brain. To do that, she analyzed the test scores and MRI data of children who attended a 6-week summer reading program, like Springboard Collaborative.
That looks really nice.
She found that after the intervention, children from lower socioeconomic backgrounds showed marked improvement across several reading skills. But most striking was the change in their brain structure.
Children from the lowest socioeconomic backgrounds made the greatest gains in the region of Wernicke's area.
These preliminary results suggest that reading interventions can positively impact brain development.
You ready? I'm going to show you what it looks like from one ear all the way to the other ear. The huge benefit of being a child is that your brain is extraordinarily plastic. It's amenable to change in ways that are very distinctive and unique. What do you think?
The brain's ability to respond to changes in environment and behavior is called neuroplasticity.
Neuroplasticity is the changeability of the brain with different kinds of experience.
For educators, neuroplasticity presents both risk and reward.
The metaphor that we use is neuroplasticity as a double-edged sword. The same systems that are vulnerable are also enhanceable.
One factor that makes the brain vulnerable is chronic stress. This can hamper development in areas where our abilities to learn and to process emotions intersect.
The limbic system of the developing brain is where the affective emotional life of children is shaped and where their learning brain is shaped.
The limbic system includes the hippocampus, which is critical to memory, and the amygdala, the brain's emotional smoke detector. When the brain perceives a threat, the amygdala initiates a chain reaction. That triggers the release of the stress hormone, cortisol. With chronic stress, the amygdala becomes oversensitive and floods the body with cortisol, putting it in a state of high alert. This can disrupt the delicate chemical balance and structure of the limbic system.
That means that children who are highly reactive to stress are easily triggered by other events in their lives.
gonna give you a countdown. 10, Jackie.
Being in an economically disadvantaged neighborhood, some children come in with a lot of baggage.
3.
Dana Curtin teaches 4th grade at Fairmont Neighborhood School in the Bronx, where nearly half of the children are born into poverty, the highest rate in New York City.
Whether it's family life or a result of the neighborhood that they live in, children carry more stress than usual. A lot of times they're already in a defensive mode because of what has happened before the day started. It could be, I don't have the money for a class trip. I don't have the school supplies I needed. Some children come in hungry.
The disruptive nature of adversity on one child can derail learning for an entire class of students.
If you have a child that is off task and refusing to cooperate, it could be chaos. It has the ability to become a distraction unless addressed.
Be mindful of the time, 10 minutes.
The positive side of this story is that there actually is a prevention for this. And the prevention is the human buffer.
You keep reading, and I like the fact that you're using the pencil. I want to really commend you on that.
When children feel safe, when children are feeling nurtured, that adults are caring about them, there actually is another pathway.
Okay, is everybody with us? All right, there's the boat. Who's on the
To buffer the stress her students may be experiencing outside of school, Dana makes her classroom a safe place. She and her co-teacher, Kristen Robles, rely on techniques aimed at creating a positive classroom environment.
Let's turn and talk to our partner.
60 seconds.
Go.
One tool is called Turn and Talk.
Chocolate, everything tastes like chocolate.
John might just follow slowly with Susan. He wanted some water. People wanted some.
Children need to collaborate, and they respond when they have somebody to respond with.
John was carrying a dark blue trumpet case, and what's it?
We want everybody to feel accepted and welcomed for what they have to bring.
Another technique uses praise in place of punishment.
Thank you to those who are listening, to our classmate. Thank you.
We like to praise those who are on task, because the hope is that everybody wants to be praised.
Thank you. Thank you to those who are quiet and waiting.
When they hear thank you to those, everybody's like, oh, I want to be a those. And so everybody just kind of falls in line.
Okay, thank you to those who are standing in the circle.
We have to be careful how we speak to children, because you can speak life and death into a child's school life with words that you say.
Say one word that reminds you of being in 4th grade in 409 this year. Then we're gonna say the person that we're tossing the string to, and we're gonna hold on to one end and toss it to that person.
Learning. Okay, you gotta step up so they can see you. Step up a little bit more. Right there, that's good. That's good.
Robotics.
Hold the string and throw it.
Oh, wait.
School readiness means you walk in the door, and what you see and feel is a joyous, safe, engaged, positive school community where every single message that children get is that they are capable of great things.
People say, you're a teacher, oh, God bless you. And I say, yes, thank you. But God bless my children, because my children are putting in the hard work. I'm just showing them. My children are taking it and they're running with it. And so don't give up.
All right. Here.
This idea that there's one pathway is very small-minded, narrow-minded. There are these multiple pathways. Some of them are laden with barriers, and others are fairly seamless. We have to figure out how to make them more seamless for all children. It takes really being concerned about the whole child.
Part of focusing on the whole child is understanding that even when children are ready to learn, they may not have the necessary tools to learn effectively.
We would never throw a child into the deep end of a swimming pool and say, swim. We wouldn't do that. But in education, that's exactly what we do. We throw the kid into the classroom and we say, learn.
Are there proven techniques for teaching all kids not just what to learn, but how to learn better?
have some really bright students who couldn't tell me what we had done a month ago. They could copy. They could copy really well. But if you asked an essential question, they wouldn't know how to answer.
So our essential question for this chapter is, what transformations occurred?
Patrice Bain, a history teacher in Illinois, wants her students to remember everything she teaches them. So she asks them to think about an essential question.
There we go.
And she tests them every day.
Names on top, number 1 through 5.
I just take whatever we did the day before, I put it in a basket, I pull 5 things out. It makes the students so accountable for their learning. They have to retrieve this information.
What is the term for a grand church? Number 2, what is the term?
This is no high-stakes test that students often dread. This is a mini-quiz. Bain will not record their scores.
And number 5, what was the term for the journey and battle to take control of Jerusalem?
These quizzes prompt students to fetch the information from memory. Known as active retrieval, the process has been shown to strengthen long-term retention.
We should be trying to retrieve the information, getting it out of memory rather than trying to cram it into memory. It turns out that retrieval practice is extremely effective for creating robust memories.
After decades of studying teaching techniques, cognitive psychologists Roddy Roediger and Mark McDaniel researched their learning strategies at Columbia Middle School.
None.
We were interested in whether or not getting things out of memory, that's what you do when you take a test, could actually be an effective learning technique.
Patrice Bain's classroom was one of their laboratories. In their studies at Columbia Middle School, Roediger and McDaniel found that integrating daily low-stakes quizzes to promote active retrieval improved outcomes for students.
How can we answer this question? Raise your hand.
People got infected with the bubonic plague. The plague helped to end feudalism.
Oh.
The results clearly showed over and over again that material that was quizzed was remembered better on the exams in class.
Are we making any connections?
So in fact, students were improving about a grade level, coming up from a B-type performance to A-type performance on material that had been quizzed.
Let's see, Garen, what is feudalism?
A role of governing
One problem we've had is people trying to make learning easy. They don't want the kids to fail. They want the kids to succeed, but you also want the child to learn accurately and to pick up the correct information.
Somebody help me.
There we go. It's okay to ask for help. That's the way we learn.
And to do that, challenge is good.
Oh, hands on this one. What did the Normans do? Liam.
Low or no-cost strategies that work, even when learning gets hard, have proven especially useful in communities like Upper Darby, Pennsylvania, just outside Philadelphia. Budget cuts here meant big changes for the district's public schools.
Programs were starting to be cut from the public schools in this area, and people started to move away. When you're taking those resources away from kids who need it, it then makes its way into student achievement issues for a school district, and that led to all these problems.
How we doing today? You all right? Morning, guys. How we doing today?
Among the hardest hit in the Upper Darby district was Beverly Hills Middle School. In 2011, it was struggling to meet the state's many standardized testing requirements and was labeled a failing school. Principal Kelly Simone rules the hallways here.
Watch out, buddy. You okay?
We're trying to meet the needs of all kids with less. We had to do something.
Over 60 languages of origin are spoken here, and most students qualify for a free or reduced lunch.
We couldn't just say, oh, well, we pack it up and go. We still have to teach children and educate children every day.
Whether it's athletics.
Where there's poverty and there's heartache and there's hardships, unfortunately, there are kids who come into school that are needy. I wanted to figure out how can we improve some of the climate culture things that we were dealing with.
The district took a gamble and called a former school teacher. Now a psychologist at the University of Pennsylvania, Angela Duckworth is trying to figure out what makes people stick with it through the hard times.
When I was a teacher, many of my students were not doing as well as I wanted them to do. And for me, the gap between what I thought they could intellectually handle and what they were actually doing is what drove me to study the psychology of effort. And I'm gonna really try 100%. What is the psychology of staying with things and not giving up on them as so many of my students did?
So Duckworth studied a number of success-driven groups, including West Point cadets, CEOs, and college students. Her measure is a test in which people rate their likelihood for not giving up when times get tough. She calls this trait grit. Subjects noted how strongly they identified with statements such as, "New projects and ideas sometimes distract me from previous ones," or "Setbacks discourage me." She found that even more than IQ, grit was a strong predictor of success.
Some people might think, well, IQ is genetic, but character is learned. But really, both IQ and character are both genetic and learned. So that's the kind of messy, answer to the nature-nurture question.
All right, strong.
With Duckworth's help, the district established its character education program.
All right, when I say deep practice, you say, all right, awesome.
In addition to the standard curriculum, teachers now carve out time for grit.
It is really not easy to take an insight from research and just, make it real in the classroom.
Goal setting and perseverance lie at the heart of these lessons.
When you get knocked down, you get up, and next time, guess what? You do it even better.
In one exercise, students in Mary Burns' 6th grade language arts class are challenged to write a few lines about a unique food they enjoy.
Ready, set, go. Quick share out, guys.
My favorite food is spicy Indian food. I love the smell and taste of the exotic spices. I can't choose just one dish.
Great try.
Then they must rewrite those sentences and make them better.
Now, I want to smell it, I want to taste it, I want to know how it looks. Ready, set, choose challenge, guys.
To get better in any skill is to challenge yourself to do what you couldn't do before, to concentrate, to get feedback, and then to do it all over again.
100% all the way. Super
I think
job.
for all students, the place where they learn is the place that's just a little harder, just a little more advanced than what they can do today.
I'm going to ask you to wrap up that last sentence, turn to your partner, turn. Hurry up.
My favorite delicacy is hot and spicy Indian food. I love eating the delicious curry folded with soft, fluffy white rice. I especially love the exotic smell and flavor of the spice blends.
Awesome. How many people liked their work better after you went back in there and improved it? How many people saw the growth? Although it took more time, how many people say it was worth it? So you want to remember that, how you felt after you met the challenge, after you set your mind to giving it your absolute best.
Grit is not a solution for all struggling students, especially those faced with challenges beyond their control. But it can encourage some children to keep at it.
I think grit is this intuition that things are going to be hard and you're going to want to give up because you are frustrated, because you are disappointed, because you are discouraged. But in that moment, you're going to stick to it and not give up, and you're going to keep doing that over a long period or whatever it is. Like I want to get.
Since introducing grit into classroom instruction, teachers and administrators at Beverly Hills Middle School have seen firsthand how attitude impacts academic performance.
Public education, K-12, is not a terminal degree. It's the beginning of the rest of your life. It's about, kids setting a goal for what they want to achieve and who they want to be in life. That will increase student achievement. And I believe that's not a huge cost financially, it's a cost of time.
Grit is to me like the ability to work through things even though they may put stress on you.
Having determination, basically.
Blood, sweat, and tears through no matter what.
Well, when I'm faced with a challenge, I kind of power through it.
If I get afraid of doing new things, I just take a deep breath and tell myself that I can do it.
You're never finished. You can always keep going. There's only a deadline. You can keep going to make it better.
Teaching skills that nurture positive personal qualities is having a resurgence. But as an educational practice, it's nothing new.
It was Martin Luther King many decades ago who said that the goal of a true education is intelligence plus character. So it's not just in the last few years that we're having this epiphany.
It was the 1960s, 1970s. We were coming out of an era of behaviorism when you could only talk about behavior. You could not talk about what was in the head or what someone felt. That was considered unscientific. We were putting that behind us, and we were rushing into the head with great eagerness. It was an era now called the cognitive revolution that said we can never understand human behavior without studying human thought and human emotion.
Carol Dweck is a psychologist whose early research formed one of character education's more popular theories, growth mindset.
What I found was that children think in different ways about their intelligence. Some believe it's just this fixed trait, I have a certain amount and that's it. But we saw that other kids believed that their basic talents and abilities could be cultivated. They took on challenges. They applied the effort. That's a growth mindset. We've shown repeatedly that teaching kids a growth mindset really helps their achievement over time.
We want a world where, regardless of where you are born, you have got an equal shot as anyone else.
Helping children by convincing them that they can learn is a strategy that education entrepreneur Sal Khan has also adopted.
In order for someone to really reach their potential, they have to believe in themselves. I saw that firsthand with Nadia.
Nadia is Khan's cousin who, at 12 years old, lacked confidence in her learning abilities.
Nadia was having trouble in math. Because of that, they were putting her into a slower math class. And I was like, look, if you're up for it, let's get on the phone every day, and I want to work with you. And she agreed.
Let's get started.
Ultimately, Khan designed math tutorials for his cousin that he shared with her on YouTube.
If I've traveled 0.05 kilometers, how many centimeters have I traveled? Question mark centimeters.
Soon, not only did Nadia improve in math, but her attitude or mindset changed as well.
So one of a bigger unit is equal to a bunch of the smaller unit.
The same young Nadia at 12 years old who thought that she did not have the capability to understand unit conversion, 2 years later was taking calculus at the local university. That was exhibit A for me of, wow, a lot of this is mindset, and a lot of this is your perception of yourself.
Inspired by his niece, Khan established a not-for-profit online tutorial service.
Let's say I start with an old classic. 1 plus 1. 9x minus 4y.
Over a decade old, Khan Academy has more than 38 million registered users worldwide. Lessons range from math to organic chemistry and world history.
Those microtubules are going to start pulling on each of the sister chromatids.
But now, they're experimenting with something new. Khan wants students to keep trying when they're struggling.
A growth mindset is where you think of your brain as something that can grow. You can expand, stretch, and build it up.
We've worked with the research labs to start putting mini growth mindset interventions in Khan Academy.
They've launched an international competition that teaches math and encourages effort in the process.
How many people do we have signed up?
We're up over 25,000.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Idaho might be.
Idaho's killing it. Yeah.
The state of Idaho is among the competitors.
We're now doing a whole virtual and physical challenge with communities that are all about building mindset. We call it LearnStorm.
Are you ready for LearnStorm?
Have a huge round of applause for
All the people you admire in sports and media and business, they've all failed more times than you realize, but what differentiated them is that they got back up and they kept going. And so that's where LearnStorm came from. We said,
LearnStorm is a competition built for someone like JT. More agile with video games than he is with math, the Idaho middle schooler is often discouraged when he gets an answer wrong.
there's such a stigma with getting something wrong. That's failure. I mean, the word failure literally feels like, it feels bad, like cortisol starts getting put into your system as soon as you even hear the word failure, an F. You know, I have dreams where I see an F still.
Well, in the very back end.
Draw your line below too, so you know that we're
I will, but I'm not on it.
keeping everything organized. Yep, now erase that and re-add.
Wait, I'm lost with the A, so.
When you're trying to understand something that's a little intimidating, maybe a little complex, it's stressful to have someone else waiting for you to understand it. You know, hey, look, you see why y is now equal to -8? Yeah, I understand it.
So you missed the whole answer just because of how you lined it all up. Just erase your answer.
My head hurts.
You just feel pressure. You don't want to waste the other person's time. You don't want them to judge you.
When his father leaves, the Khan tutorial helps JT work through a tough problem. A hint appears on screen, telling him how to change his strategy. An additional prompt encourages him to try again. Once he's correctly answered all the questions in the series, JT moves on to the next level of difficulty and gets energy points for his effort. This point total goes toward his overall performance in the LearnStorm Challenge.
Hopefully that starts to deprogram some of this failure is bad, don't step out of your comfort zone, stick to what you know, fixed mindset thinking.
No, that's good.
Yep.
With LearnStorm, students are not only rewarded for getting it right, but for trying. An encouragement tool that's part gaming strategy and part cognitive science.
If I had one single hope is that any participant in LearnStorm, their mindset towards learning has changed.
Yep.
I got a couple of questions wrong and I went home and I reviewed those questions and now I got it right. That's the type of impact we hope to see. And I think the cognitive science and the tech are only going to become more and more symbiotic.
Oh, that one's pretty easy.
The intersection of technology and psychology is a wonderful intersection.
2.0.
We want children to engage joyfully in a learning process. Will they stick to it? Will they find it enjoyable? So we care about these things too, not just the final outcome.
Designed more than 100 years ago, our school system needed to prepare a workforce for a factory-based, industrialized economy. But that one-size-fits-all approach to education often doesn't work for students of varying interests and abilities. How can a school system built for mass education be redesigned to meet the needs of individual students? After World War II, the U.S. Air Force faced a similar challenge when it transitioned to jet-powered aviation.
Jets must be handled differently
smoothly through the whole cycle of operations.
Planes are going faster, they're more powerful, all kinds of technology now. And they're having just a heck of a time with pilot performance.
Test flights of newly designed fighter jets were crashing at an alarming rate.
For generations, the dominant military design philosophy was that if you had to create one thing, your best bet was to actually design for an average-sized person.
When a young researcher figured out that there was no such thing as an average-sized pilot, he determined that the problem was not pilot error, but one of design. So instead of trying to find pilots to fit their planes, the Air Force began building planes to fit their pilots. A simple solution? Something commonly seen in automobiles today: adjustable seats and steering.
It's a recognition that average-based industrial systems have failed. So when I think of the parallel to education, I think we will see pretty big gains just from shifting toward individuals and away from averages.
Do you really know how to do that?
To create a more adjustable school system that adapts to the needs of millions of children, education entrepreneur Max Ventilla is relying on digital technology.
One of the key hallmarks of a 21st century profession is that you are using digital technologies to build on your own capabilities. We can all have the same Legos, and we can create an infinite number of different arrangements that each satisfy our own individual need. For me, this phrase mass customization is the goal.
So can you tell us more about that superimposed layer?
That's a CA something T.
So I think we've identified that.
Called Alt School, this experiment in customizable learning environments is taking place in a small private network of one-room schoolhouses.
It's not a lab in the form that we're performing experiments. It's a lab in the form of us trying to understand how to build the best quality education every single day in that classroom.
Nearly everything here is done on computers. By working closely with software engineers, teachers can alter the programs to suit the needs of each child.
How do you do that? You could do it like that.
When you get a device now, that device has a settings icon. And when you click on that settings icon, there's all kinds of things that you can change to customize it for yourself.
You know how you have the bar graphs within the cells?
Now we can provide customization at scale, and that in an education environment means that individual children who think differently, who learn differently, or on different paths can now get the thing that works best for them for the particular goal they're trying to achieve.
Ratios, like fractions, are about relationships. So in our scale model, as we grow, as the actual height of
At this alt school in Palo Alto, Courtney Reynolds is teaching a math lesson about ratios to a mixed-age group of students.
So this is about 170 feet.
After the group lesson, students will put their new knowledge about ratios to work on building scale models of a living space, or dive deeper into the subject through personalized lesson plans called playlists.
Think of your playlist as your textbook. But instead of it being every child gets the same textbook, each child gets their own textbook that is composed of different chapters.
Well, right now, I have this playlist about being mindful of my scale.
Maybe there's like a chapter that's on math, but there's 5 different levels of math. So maybe you get level 3 math, maybe you get level 5 math.
And when I click the I'm done button, I send it to my teacher, so my teacher receives it.
With students working independently, Courtney has time to see who needs help. Like student Juan Martin, who is struggling to find the right ratio for his scale model.
Now you don't teach these 35 students all the same curriculum. You teach these 35 students the thing that helps them with their core skills, and it lines up with their passions.
Show me how we're repeating these units.
In this model, the educator moves a little bit away from being a direct teacher and more towards being an education facilitator.
Why can't I do 5 times 10?
What's stopping you?
Not sure.
What does 5 times 10 mean?
When Juan Martin realizes that 1 inch on his model can represent 5 feet at full scale, it all comes together.
Oh, so that's why. Thanks.
I think we did it.
We're not trying to reduce educator time. We're trying to improve the value of their time.
Nice job. Budding architect.
While most schools cannot afford this level of customization, the hope is that as technology becomes cheaper, this model can be scaled up and adapted for all children.
It's really important to realize that technology is not a solution. It is a tool, just like a pencil is a tool. So it's really about how we choose to use this new tool at our disposal. But digital technologies now give us the power and the flexibility to create customizable environments at scale without spending more money.
Even though digital technology is a familiar presence in the lives of today's students, its long-term impact on their learning is still unknown. But one thing is certain. The generation of students entering high school today is the first born into a world where they can literally hold a computer in their hands from cradle to grave.
Human beings are learning organizations. That's what we do from the first moment we are on the earth.
Children's natural quest to learn meets new and unique challenges as they move into high school.
As kids move into adolescence, they're engaging with their friendships, they're engaging with their community, and they want to feel like they're part of something.
The physical, emotional, and social changes of adolescence pose new challenges and offer great opportunities.
They're trying to figure out, who am I? Not just what do I do and what can I do, but what kind of person am I? And how do my actions show that?
Many educators see this as an important way to engage students in learning by making it more relevant to their lives. That's the intention behind East Palo Alto Academy, a charter school that opened its doors in 2001, the same year that Omar Gaitan was born.
Originally, my family is from Michoacan, Mexico. What brought my dad over here was, the search for money. My dad never even finished the 4th grade, but he still wants me to make it to college.
Since 1975, this city has been without a traditional public high school and has struggled with crime and violence.
One of our biggest challenges is, how do you get someone college ready if their parents have never gone to high school?
Woo! Morning, guys. What's good, Omar? What's good, Andy? Thank you for being on time.
Admission to East Palo Alto Academy is first come, first served. With just over 300 students, it's an attractive alternative to the neighboring town's high school with a much larger student body.
A school like ours needs to exist because there are students who get overwhelmed by being one of 600 other freshmen.
Because you've been through all the history classes.
When you have over 89% of your students qualify for free and reduced lunch, over 75% of your students are learning English, and over 50% of your students qualify as homeless, you inevitably have students who are going to have challenges when it comes to being ready to learn.
What problems can arise when we seek revenge?
Teachers here take a different approach.
We do very much culturally responsive instructions, so we don't use your typical textbook. We're going to take from everything and create a curriculum that is engaging for our students.
Let's talk about it.
Restorative justice class is one example. Here, students learn to write and speak openly about issues relevant to their lives and community.
Omar, speak on it. How do we see cycles in gangs?
Say like a rival gang shoot you, then your homie's gonna go get like payback to like avenge you.
Right.
So and then it just keeps going. It's like back and forth.
It's a never-ending cycle, right?
Yeah.
We have all of the same.
They're graded on essays, presentations, and class participation.
And the question in all of those cycles is, who's gonna have the guts to break it?
Culturally responsive instruction is a way to say to a student, I recognize that you have these assets, these academic assets, these social assets
It's the same pain.
that I want to feed.
All right, let's get to writing.
Because this is what's going on in our society right now, and this is how it applies to you. Figure out what your place is.
This concept is important for a school like ours because it's a way to show that teaching and learning happens everywhere, not just in an academic setting, but as human relations.
As a way to inspire and keep students engaged in the classroom, they're encouraged to pursue their passions outside of school. Impressed by Omar's writing skills, one of his teachers pushed him to start a hip-hop club.
Hip-hop gives me a voice, a way to like express my thoughts freely.
What's up? You guys ready? So all these other channels, we don't really need them.
Which one's the ones, these two?
Exactly.
Rap could be about anything.
I want to show you the other one.
Okay. Yo, try to imagine the worst feeling you've ever had. Now try to imagine capturing that feeling inside a pen and a pad.
Could be about living here.
Now take a while to imagine all that.
It could be about the struggle, coming from the ghetto.
Imagine how
Rap could be like my diary, you know?
What word comes to your mind? What message? If you had to sum this
Motivation.
up. Motivation?
That's the message.
I think that's a cool title of yours.
As with any extracurricular activity, Hip Hop Club can be both benefit and distraction.
Omar, can I check in with you, please? Thank you. I wanted to talk a little bit about your grades.
When his grades start to slip, Omar's advisor, Michaela Perkins, wants to know why, and to make sure that he understands what's at stake.
So you went from A's and B's to what we have here. You have an A in English, an A in RJ, an A+ in imaging. You have a what in biology?
A D.
A D. How did you go from an A+ to a D+ in bio? As an advisor, my role is to listen first, and then take what students tell me and help them design their own academic path. And sometimes saying, no. I hear you, but you think you can be here, but I know you can be here. Can you get into college with a D in bio?
No. It has to be a C or more.
Mm-hmm. So what are you gonna do about that D?
Raise it up. Try to.
Academic advisory here is not a voluntary conference. It's a required 4-year class with regular check-ins to keep students on track toward their education goals.
Is English a challenging class?
Somewhat.
Somewhat. So if you can get an A+ in a challenging class, then that tells me that what? What could you get in bio?
An A. Them holding me up to a high standard, like that makes me feel good. That means that they like believe I can do it. So if they believe I can do it, that means I could do it, you know?
Every second that I'm with a kid, I have the opportunity to be a light in their life. So it's a lot of encouragement, it's a lot of advocacy, it's a lot of cheerleading.
65% of our students' parents did not go to high school. So you need to be that pushy parent who's gonna help them through this system. They need to be given this very powerful combination of high expectations with an incredible amount of love, support, and understanding to push them up, sometimes pull them up.
During the 1990s, while East Palo Alto's crime rate was soaring, Silicon Valley was booming. Across the freeway, Palo Alto's median household income rose to more than twice the national average. Students here can choose between 2 elite public high schools.
Everybody is hyper-performing and comes from really advantaged backgrounds. Kings of Silicon Valley live there. You get a very intense pressure.
Here it seems like her inner state is outcast, but then nature is good. So we might rethink the word reflection. And it sounded like I heard something about mother and caring, and so maybe nature as like solace.
Instead of test scores and grades that might make you a hero in another school, you just wonder if you can make it.
Cole McFall goes to Henry Gunn High School.
I'd like to think of myself as a good student. So I do student government. President of the Chinese Culture Club. May not look like it, but I'm a fourth Chinese. I also do Model United Nations, and I'm also big into basketball and try to manage all that with the studying leads to stress.
We have almost 2,000 students, and of the 2,000, over 90% of them go on to four-year colleges. So we have a very academically focused community.
The physics concept for third law.
Maybe it's from your parents, maybe it's from your friends, maybe it's from like your teachers pushing you. Just would work for like late hours into the night, and it's probably really unhealthy for me.
Widely known for student achievement, Gunn High School was forced to confront the dark side of intense academic expectations.
It's very important to put social, emotional, and academic learning on the table together and work productively at all of that at once. When we ignore how children feel, how they are learning to be in the world and interact, we imperil them in a number of ways.
He was the guy on the basketball team that would just have a smile on his face and just be laughing all the time. Cam was his name. He was one of my close friends. I've been Facebook chatting him the night before at like 10 o'clock. I like walked into my AP US history class when I heard the news, and somebody said like Cam committed suicide, and I was like, what? Like that can't be right at all. I'd never cried so hard. I definitely went through the denial phase for like the next couple of days. I was like, damn. So, yeah.
One of our former students died by suicide, and 2 months later, one of our current students died by suicide, and a month and a half later, a third student died by suicide. And it was a pretty tumultuous time on our campus.
Suicide is among the leading causes of death for teens. Since 2009, Gunn High School has experienced 8, more than half of them occurring within one school year.
There definitely was a culture of blame in the community. The sense was that there was a culture of academic competition, and our high school or the academic stress may have been one of the root causes.
I think definitely some people at our school do feel sort of a need to succeed, and they push themselves really hard. I just looked at the situation, I was like, this shouldn't be happening. Something has to change.
In response, Cole teamed up with his friend and classmate Chloe Sorensen to launch a wellness committee.
One of the things that Cole and I were talking about when we were creating this position, having someone to coordinate all of these different initiatives and these efforts that we have on campus.
Alongside teachers, health practitioners, and administrators, they're working to change the school culture by reducing student stress and improving emotional health.
Gunn now offers adolescent counseling service, and that's like pretty much a psychologist that you can go to and talk about whatever you need to talk about.
In addition to counseling services for students, among the many changes at Gunn High School was a new bell schedule.
We really tried to invest in students having a little downtime between their focused learning experiences. So we went with a block schedule. Students have fewer classes per day. We extended lunch. We extended the passing periods. Pretty much every possible decision that I make about this school, I make through the lens of, is this going to contribute to student well-being?
One of the biggest changes was getting rid of an optional early morning class that had some students arriving at 7:20 a.m.
That decision was in response to a lot of pressure from the professionals who know about sleep and mental health. Many of the pediatricians who work with our students understand that they aren't getting enough sleep.
There's just a litany of things that go south if you haven't had adequate sleep.
UCLA basketball was...
The most scary thing is depression and the start of these mental health issues. Kids who are sleeping less have more suicidal ideation.
In adolescence, sleep can become a matter of life and death. Why? And can anything be done about it?
We have this system where biology is pushing this way, the school district is pushing this way, and sleep is getting pushed out.
During adolescence, hormones cause dramatic changes in teenagers' sleep cycles. Their body's internal clock, or circadian rhythm, shifts, causing them to fall asleep later at night. If they have to get up early for school, they're chronically sleep deprived. One solution is to move school start times later, like Gunn High School did. But for most school districts, tinkering with bus schedules and after-school activities is a tricky proposition.
My concern has become, what do we do when school districts can't change the start time? Is there a way that we can move that window for sleep?
At Brown University's Bradley Sleep and Chronobiology Lab, Mary Carskadden spends her waking hours studying sleep.
Hi guys, how's it going? Great. Okay.
She and her team are trying to manipulate the circadian rhythm of teens to better suit the traditional school day.
Medium intensity, and on 3.
They found the key lies in harnessing a major driver of the sleep-wake cycle: light. All the light we see is processed by light-sensitive cells in the retina. Most help our vision, but a few send messages to our brain's biological clock. Normally, when it gets dark, this clock signals the pineal gland to release melatonin, the hormone that tells the brain that it's nighttime.
Some people call it the hormone of darkness, or even more fun, the vampire hormone, because the melatonin is produced in the biological night. So when the melatonin rises, it opens the gate for us to go to sleep.
As morning approaches, melatonin secretion subsides, and we awaken. Carskadden's first task is to find out which wavelength, or color, of light has the greatest impact on the release of melatonin.
Okay, I'm gonna change to the high-intensity green light right now.
To do that, subjects sit in front of various types of light, well into the night.
The room 2 looks like they're almost done, so we'll give them their saliva sample.
Meanwhile, researchers monitor the melatonin level in their saliva.
Our whole goal was to find what's the best signal that can crush the melatonin. Turned out that the one that seemed to work best was the brightest in the blue spectrum.
So that's the light that will suppress melatonin the most during this protocol. And
What they found is that prolonged morning exposure to intense blue-enhanced light helped kids wake up and be more alert. This, in turn, could help shift their circadian clock so that they fall asleep earlier at night.
The vision of this is that we can go into schools with a recommendation to build in changeable lighting so they can have a prescription that's not the same all day long. We're trying to get to the point where I can say, as a behavioral scientist, that this is the magic that will really help enhance school performance. Learning should be a joy, not a torture.
Waking up to my mom at 6:21 every morning to get ready for zero period health. As a senior, that's not very fun.
What I like most about school is
you're constantly like problem solving.
I like using creative thinking and like logic.
But if you think, I'm curious about that, I want to learn more about that, and you go seek it out, it sticks a lot better with you.
Both students and experts agree that providing a more rewarding school experience can inspire better learning, particularly in high school. But how to do that varies, depending on the community and the student.
In order to thrive in school academically, before the skills are presented, you need to have some sense that you're valued in that community and that people in that community see a future for you.
All right, ready? Stretch to the right.
But feeling valued can be a challenge, especially for students born outside of the United States.
Switch.
With our rising immigrant population, it is estimated that by the year 2055, no single racial or ethnic group will make up a majority.
We all have these social identities. All of them have negative stereotypes. It imposes a huge psychological burden on a person to function in an important situation where they could be seen in terms of one of these negative stereotypes. If you're a member of such a group and you're in school, your progress is going to be affected by that.
200 starts down in that corner. The 400 meter, I believe, starts here. 400, I got Rudy, I got Hector, I got Murtada.
As a Muslim refugee from war-torn Iraq, Murtada Mahmoud is often the target of such stereotypes.
When we walk, like my sister's wearing hijab, some people will just stare at us for I don't know what reason.
He and his family fled to the United States by way of Syria in 2013.
I would see bombings and shootings. One day, I woke up and we just packed ourselves and left. It was our country, but it wasn't good to live there.
Get a quick yell. All right, three on three. 1, 2, 3, head down.
They arrived in Lynn, a UN refugee relocation site in Massachusetts. More than 15,000 people from around the world have been resettled in the state since 2009. With these newcomers, the number of students learning English in local schools has grown steadily.
Hello, حبيبي. Hello, mom. Hello. Hello.
خليجون.
خليجون إيه الله تبارك.
Since the loss of their father, Murtada and his sisters helped their mother improve her language skills.
حلو كانوا رحت للجيم هماتينا على شو اسمه هذا؟ تراملي. You should speak with me English in the home. It's good.
It's like we go, يعني برا we speak English. So at home we want to relax.
I want to learn. Must be.
When Murtada first arrived, he attended a public school where he was separated in a class for English language learners.
When I first came, I would speak like broken English. I would go to class and I was the only Iraqi kid there. The teachers, they all spoke Spanish. The teacher sometimes will translate for them in Spanish, and like I would just sit in the corner.
For high school, Bertada switched to KIPP Academy Lynn Collegiate. Instead of separating English language learners, this charter school includes them in regular classes.
This reading is ridiculously challenging. I threw up some page numbers here. If you want to go straight to the sex scene, I don't blame you.
One of the biggest gaps that might happen is English language learners may feel again separated or they're not taken seriously.
As head of KIPP Lynn's English as a Second Language program, Renee Alderette supports students like Murtada in their classes.
Making sure that the students are included in the general education classroom eliminates for them a feeling of isolation.
What are the power dynamics here and why?
He married Antoinette for her money, so like I think like she kind of wants him like to keep him away from her.
It's an important detail.
By including English language learners in regular classes, KIPP impacts student self-image and raises expectations as well.
The students are aware that, oh, what is expected of everyone is expected of me too.
What are the moments that make up that experience? And of those moments, which one is a defining moment, okay?
The idea of college and my career and what am I doing after high school, that is something that is expected of me too.
KIPP students are expected to go to college, so Murtada is required to take a special 2-year prep course.
How are we doing, guys? Do we feel like we might have something?
Now a junior, he's practicing how to tell his personal story on college applications.
Learning a new language, that did not just happen in a day, right? How long did that take you?
About a year.
A year. And what happened in that year? What are the moments that made up that year? Put me in that moment where you learn or change or take action. That makes sense?
I was put in the mainstream classes. That helped me because I could listen to other people like when they were talking to me, and as the year went on, like my English level went up. I played it like multiple times just to say. Why? That made me work more on myself because like I want to also like to talk, have my voice. All of the YouTubers that I know, like they all went.
High expectations will drive students to make sure they meet their college and career goals. But with high expectations also comes support and the building of character.
On your mark.
My father, he always forgot about what's bad. He was thinking about what's next. That's what I also like to do. I always forget the past and just think how to improve what's coming next.
What our schools need to do is build a community in that school that really conveys to every kid in it a sense of belonging and having a real central role in society. The whole thing is open to them. It's really open to you. And here's the route.
It's kind of a different feeling than I think junior high or elementary school was. In high school, everyone is trying to get to that next level too.
When you have a really nice teacher, it becomes like a family environment, and that's what I tend to like.
You're kind of growing up and they're kind of treating you more as a mature person.
This year's gonna be fun because I get to like hang out with all my closest friends I've been with like all these 4 years, and
School is more than just work.
As adolescents seek their place in the world, their need to be part of a group takes on greater significance. Many educators wonder if this teen yearning can be leveraged to engage learning.
Adolescents in school really need opportunities to connect their skills to who they are as a person. And to do that, they need to be in a place where they feel like they belong.
Hey, welcome. Thank you for coming. I'm Mary Helen. Nice to meet you.
Since her days as a teacher, University of Southern California neuroscientist Mary Helen Imordino Yang has been interested in knowing how emotions factor into learning.
I quickly realized that there was very, very little known about the kind of stuff that we really care about in education, like how people become inspired. How do we become interested in things? How do we build curiosity? And how can we support that process?
In trying to identify which parts of the brain are involved in the deepest and most meaningful learning, Imordino Yang works with teens from troubled neighborhoods.
We're going to be watching stories. We really want to know what you think, so there's no right or wrong answers. These are kids who see a lot of crime, they see a lot of dangerous things, they see a lot of poverty. And we wanted to understand, how do they make meaning of that world around them? This first one is a story about a girl who lives in Swat, Pakistan. And the city was being taken over and basically run by a group called the Taliban. So I want you to watch her when she was 12 years old.
First, she gets them emotionally engaged in a topic by showing them videos about people struggling to overcome adversity.
And I want to become a doctor.
So how does her story make you feel?
This story makes me feel upset how she wants to be a doctor and continue on with her education, but it makes her sad that knowing her journey would be very difficult.
For adolescents, these types of stories can trigger moments of deep reflection.
They come back from those kind of reflective moments with this heightened appreciation of the meaning of the story and what it applies to in their own life and what it means for the nature of the world more broadly.
And it's crazy how it's that powerful.
Whereas we've known that for a long time in education, the neural data are giving us new insights into the mechanics of that process.
Over here.
To find out which brain regions are harnessed during reflective emotion, Imordino Yang monitors the students' brain activity as they re-watch the emotional videos in an fMRI scanner.
Hi, Estella, how you doing in there?
Good.
So we're looking at the movement of the blood flow in her brain as she's watching the stories, and where in her brain is becoming more and less active as she's experiencing these emotions.
She found that the reflective thinking caused by these emotional videos triggers widespread activity throughout the brain.
The most high-level brain states that people experience in the scanner don't just activate high-level systems. They also activate lower-level structures of the brain that are involved in regulating and monitoring your consciousness and your survival.
Imordino Yang believes that the reason why learning and emotion seem so intimately connected is because complex emotion, like admiration, can activate basic brain functions, like those regulating breathing and heart rate.
We think that the reason that humans' values and belief systems and ideals are such powerful motivators is literally that they're hooking themselves into biomechanical machinery that has evolved to keep us alive over time. So emotions are a critical piece of learning always. Meaningful learning, learning that really matters to you, that changes who you are, and that endures over time, always has an emotional component.
So I would draw upon any of these.
Her research shows that engaging students on an emotional level makes for more powerful learning experiences. And she's not alone. Some schools are trying to design curriculum that harnesses the power of emotion, especially in communities where students face adversity.
When I was going to my old school, it was a lot of chaos, a lot of violence, gun crimes. Seeing someone pull out a gun, that's kind of traumatic. If I see something like that, it's like jeopardizing my safety, my life. It was hard to approach the learning well.
Service 249.
Candace Mitchell struggled in middle school, often overwhelmed by the stressful conditions in her Philadelphia neighborhood.
Some girl had a problem with me. I don't know why. She brought a whole crowd with her. I tried to leave out the crowd, but people kept pushing me back in. She hit me, and everything is just a blur from there. I don't like hurting people, but the way she hit me, I had to. And I got suspended.
The narrative of work hard, get a good education, you'll have access to a great future doesn't ring true in many urban situations. A lot of students don't see the importance of test grades and the work feels meaningless.
So we have to put folks on the bumper.
To engage students on an emotional level, some schools are building curriculum centered around projects kids care about. That's the principal idea behind the Workshop School, which serves kids from some of Philadelphia's toughest neighborhoods.
What we're doing right now is you are creating a geometrically shaped box in wood, okay?
In this public school, traditional subjects like science and geometry are taught through hands-on projects.
The box may not be a rectangle or a square. What if we did stars?
I tried to do a star, and I'm like, no, I'm not doing it.
So let's think about a star.
Often the tension in project-based learning is make sure that there's rigorous learning.
What is your angle gonna be? 140? Yeah, 140.
When project-based learning is working well, students are engaged in solving real-world problems, creating projects that have some real tangible outcome.
That's a whole lot of sides I gotta calculate.
So the work mimics more what we do in real life.
Tomorrow, you are presenting on what happened in Flint.
In science class, Candace and her lab partner, Andrea, are working on a project about the water contamination crisis in Flint, Michigan.
So we still trying to figure out why it's taking them so long to clean the water up.
The goal is to work toward a solution and build lead-removing water filters. To accomplish that, they'll have to use their knowledge of chemistry and engineering. But first, they have to create a presentation explaining why Flint's crisis matters to their community.
I can't imagine having to wash up with that, cook with that. Water is just one of those things you trust.
If you're starting to think about designing your own projects, that begs the question, well, what kind of problems are you passionate about, and what things do you really want to solve and research and learn about?
It's just something simple that you use every day.
I did hear a little bit about Flint, but I really didn't know it was that serious. Kids are dealing with this. It made me more aware of what am I putting in my body.
If something big happened like that in Philadelphia, when we come together as a community, people in Flint did.
Right. Children need the freedom and the support and the resources to be able to deep dive into topics that interest them so that they learn what it feels like to really explore and understand something.
Exploring something of interest provided Candace with an emotional connection that changed her attitude toward learning.
When I was getting ready for my old school, I would all of a sudden have a panic attack. I'll be scared to go to school or something because of how bad the drama was.
When you do the gateway,
now when I wake up, I'm like, what do I have to do when I get to school? Who am I ready to see?
So which project did you write about for 10th grade?
I'm writing about the solar power charger. My experience at the Workshop School is different. Started being excited about what I can do.
That's good progress.
In communities where there's a lot of trauma, these small personalized schools that enable teachers to create a curriculum that is meaningful to kids, that helps them figure out how to solve the problems they see in their community, are more successful because they meet the needs of the students that they're seeking to serve.
In addition to engaging students, can project-based learning help prepare them for an unpredictable future?
The truth is that the shelf life for any skill set in this economy is unbelievably short. If we don't prepare people with self-knowledge and agency, we're never going to be able to meet the needs of our modern-day economy.
Our kids are going to have to work with knowledge that hasn't been discovered yet, on technologies that haven't been invented yet, solving big problems we have not managed to solve.
For high school senior Madison Pickett, who throws strikes as easily as she gets straight A's, learning through projects provides lifelong lessons.
Life throws you problems that you have to work through. Things don't work, you need to solve them, figure out how they work.
The scholar athlete acquired this philosophy on and off the field as part of a unique 4-year program. It combines science, technology, engineering, and math, culminating in a senior project.
Went in not knowing what engineering was, just knowing that it had something to do with math and science. I was still kind of confused because this is something I'd see in like a garage.
Our world is becoming more and more technological, and we're relying on and interacting more and more with technology to do our jobs. What we do need is people that are educated in the way technology works.
But unfortunately, not everyone is encouraged to pursue careers in technology. According to a 2014 study, only 3% of female high school students reported any interest in engineering, compared to 31% of their male counterparts.
You have all this productivity, all this wealth being created from this information revolution that we're in, but who participates in it?
So I think your goal this period and third period is get this thing installed so we can actually...
When physics teacher Amir Abu Shair launched the Dos Pueblos Engineering Academy in his California school, he wanted to address another form of inequality, the gender gap in science and engineering.
If when the piston goes down again, I can't have 14-year-old girls and their parents and their families deciding at this age to start shutting doors on these girls' career future. The first thing is just making it accessible.
Abu Shair raises private money for this project-based public school program. He also added art courses and actively recruited female students. Their enrollment jumped from 5 to 50% in 4 years.
It's this whole idea of mirrors rather than windows. You want the audience to look at the person they see and see themselves, as opposed to looking through a window and seeing an opportunity that someone else is taking advantage of. We are basically saying we're going to present this so anybody can see themselves do that.
With 41 boys and 41 girls, this year's senior class is getting ready for the Maker Faire competition. Their entry? A series of 13 interactive games, each demonstrating a different physics principle. They call it the Physics Arcade.
It's going to be more of a touchpad, kind of you got to move it rather than like clicking something.
Madison's team is building a game based on volume, density, and momentum. But not all the parts are working.
They're all getting stuck right now, and I think that the acrylic is kind of a different height, so it's getting stuck right there on that white.
Normally in a classroom, you get a problem and you just solve it, and normally you're using the equation the teacher already gave you. Whereas here, okay, you have this problem, you can use math, but what equation or what solution do you need to find?
Why don't you guys think? I have an easy solution to this.
This is my problem, I need this solution. How can I get there mathematically?
The problem that you guys both address is that it's barely making it.
Mhm.
Why is it barely making it?
Not enough momentum.
Okay, so what's the easy solution?
Put it back here?
There you go.
In addition to carrying a full load of other core subjects, Academy students must meet all the math and physics requirements of a science and engineering program, and then put that knowledge into practice.
Our goal is to basically provide students with an educational experience that satisfies the traditional requirements they would need to graduate in a unique and disruptive way. What I think attaches the kids to it is the fact that they know it's a real thing. There are real stakes. We're going to a competition.
With the competition just weeks away, time is not on their side. The show must go on. After months of preparation, Madison and her classmates are set to display their physics arcade at Maker Faire in San Mateo, California, even though it's incomplete.
We've been in the program for 4 years, and we've all been waiting for the Maker Faire.
Instead of letting audiences play with the games, students will have to explain how the games are intended to work.
Because we had the deadline, a bunch of us would skip class to go into engineering to work on our project. We
We all wanted to see where this project would take us.
All right, you guys, it's hard to scope a project that finishes at the end of the school year. If we were a company, we could just slip schedule and like release the project a month late. You know, it doesn't matter. We're not. We're a school, and we're all trying to do education here. It's not even about the product. Focus on the process, not on the product.
No, that one's an extra, it's fine.
And you're gonna try and get the ball through this red tube into here.
Okay, what do I do? Have the ball travel up, come down the ramp. So each of the three shapes have the same diameter, and then when you drop them in, you saw that linear relationship.
Did you guys make all this?
We made everything, every single piece of this.
Wow, cool.
So, yeah. Today it was crazy to hear people kind of say like, this is your high school students? You're so mature and you've done all this? You're only a senior in high school? And we're like, yeah, like, we are. All this positive feedback made us all realize what we've done, and that even though we never finished fully, we still have done so much this past year.
The students from Dos Pueblos Engineering Academy did not go home empty-handed. They won 5 awards, including Best in Class. As one of the best in her class, Madison will embark on a new engineering adventure after graduation. She'll be attending MIT.
By solving real-life problems rather than just sitting in a classroom. I'm a better problem solver now. But having all this backup in engineering will definitely help me, and I'll hopefully have a step ahead. And so there's 9 cylinders, and you're supposed to find out which one weighs more.
Science and technology are my favorite subjects, so this is like my heaven.
The school of the future will be kids riding hoverboards in the hallways.
Okay, so we're gonna have flying iPads and flying phones and flying computers.
It'd be open, it'd be fun.
I don't really imagine it having many books, just like online everything.
Like, there won't be teachers anymore.
It would be like really clean, because that's a thing for me.
The school of the future would have to transition to more of a hands-on learning experience.
I'm a senior, I'm not even an adult yet. I don't remember anything from my bio class in freshman year. And so I think like the academic stuff is not as important as like teaching students how to take care of themselves and how to be happy. I think if you teach kids how to manage their life, they'll be successful. For mental health, we need to be given those tools.
We constantly learn about how to fill our minds with new information, but when do we actually learn how to empty it and make some space?
In an effort to reduce academic stress, Gunn High School is trying mindfulness training as part of its physical education program.
Reverse, breathe in back.
Out of all this that happened to our school, the one good thing that happened was that culture of checking in. How you doing? How are you doing? How are you doing? And then not just saying, I'm okay, or I'm good, but like actually caring about, like, how are you actually doing?
When social emotional learning is being fostered, the kids have the tools to center and calm themselves, to be a good member of the school community and a contributing member of the broader community. All of those things together allow us to create a very different educational experience that has proved to be much more successful.
Whether you have everything or whether you have nothing, if you don't envision your future, you're not going to work for it. You're not going to try to protect it. You're not going to fight for it. You're not going to live, frankly, live for it.
Hey, pass me my notebook. All right. Everyone has a way of helping. That's why I do this, to help people, motivate them with my music. So
Biology got hard. That's when my advisor stepped in, my teacher stepped in. They were like, it's gonna get harder, so I gotta get better.
that you can accomplish anything with dedication and hard work.
With intervention and support, Omar maintained his GPA and continues running the Hip Hop Club.
dedication and hard work. Cut it.
How do you feel about trying to do that one more time?
Let's do it.
All right.
I think being a freshman boy really just took a toll on him. How hard is it to be 14 years old and to get great grades and to have friends and to be a leader and to stay there? That's really hard.
Oh man, you're like a master now. You're like flying through that.
We're all in the business of taking care of kids, as educators, as parents, and hopefully as human beings. No matter where you live, there is a teenager who wants to know that they matter to someone.
Our schools need to build a sense of community in that students have to feel that they belong not only in that community, but that they belong in society, that they're going to be major contributors in society. That's what a school of the future has to do.
The school of the future will engage young people and always refine itself to meet them where they are and get them to where they need to be in order to have a successful life and fulfill their dreams.
The school of the future must address the impact of adversity on children's development.
The school of the future must recognize that human beings want to learn. And if you give them an environment where it's safe to fail, safe to learn, safe to collaborate, you find joy in it.
The school of the future will be more individualized and more experimental for all of the people in it as they learn to innovate together.
The school of the future must be able to meet every kid where they're at and give them what they need to be successful.
The school of the future must continually innovate and iterate.
It has to be less about the business of school and more about the relationship with the child.
And become something that is much more interwoven with people's real lives.
It's going to need to be attentive to the whole child.
The school of the future will extend far beyond the four walls of the classroom.
It's going to be mixed age. It's going to have students learning at their own pace. I think the school of the future is going to be a happy place.
Be more PBS.